Hello, hardcover hooligans. Welcome back to the Labyrinth. We are here. I am Danilo. I'm joined by Mac, as always, and I have an opening question for you, Mac.
Yes. Of course, go ahead.
So the story we're reading today is about an infinite library where there exists every permutation of every possible book. Now, what book would you be most excited to find if any possible book would exist?
Any possible book?
Mm-hmm.
Probably a book about how to get my wife off my back. You know what I mean? No, that was just awful. It was the worst thing anybody could have ever said. I love my wife a great deal. No, I don't know. Maybe something. I bet there was something cool in the Library of Alexandria.
I think it'd be really funny. The implications of this story is that these like poor people who live in this infinite library are also occasionally stumbling like over like anime erotica as well. And they have no idea what it is. It's every book.
They're reading light novels that have pornography in them, which is awesome.
They're like, what is this sacred tome?
Yeah, this is just insane. We should say up top, we lied. We said we were doing Canticle for Leibowitz.
That was a lie.
We're scheduling because we're trying to record with my partner. It's been a whole thing, so we're doing this instead, and we're doing a few. The next couple will be different short stories, but we're starting with the Library of Babel.
Yes, The Library of Babel by Jorge Luis Borges. He was an Argentinian author from Buenos Aires. Was born in 1899, died in 1986. And I don't know about you. It's I always find it weird when like authors or like writers who are like super famous in the 20th century who have like this like reputation for being like huge intellectuals. They were in the 80s, which feels wrong.
I know.
Like Samuel Beckett died in the 80s. I'm like, Samuel Beckett listened to like Huey Lewis and the News probably, right. And I'm like that. Yeah. I can't even think about.
He saw Blade Runner. Huh?
Well, Borges famously didn't see Blade Runner because he became blind by the age of 55. So
yeah, that is
he heard Blade Runner.
He heard about Blade Runner.
You think he saw Star Wars?
Hell yeah, he did. This weird freak. Yeah, he did, definitely.
I would, if I had a time machine, that's what I'm doing. I'm seeing Star Wars with
Borges. Star Wars.
Like, what is happening?
That's Luke's
like,
I don't want to
spoil it. Who is beeping? I'm like, that's R2-D2.
Yeah. You're going to love R2.
What is he doing? He turned off his targeting controller.
He's got serious like author vibes. He's got his whole thing is
I think he looked like that when he was a baby. He looks like
I can't imagine him as not this guy.
Just this old guy who looks. Imagine an author. That's what he looks like.
And these are, I I guess this is a short story.
I know.
I don't really know. It feels like there should be a different way to describe what this is than it being a short story.
It's like speculative fiction, or like it really is like a progenitor of a lot of like fantasy, speculative fiction stuff. Like the Library of Babel, I think especially this story we're reading,
yeah, for sure,
is incredibly influential in a lot of ways that we probably don't.
It feels like
recognize.
A fucking Doctor Who episode.
Yeah,
like
and
it's stumble upon this.
And it was published in 1941 in Spanish, and then didn't come into English until the 60s, which is crazy how old it is. Versus, it also like feels very modern. Like it doesn't feel old at all.
No, not at all.
So the summary of this story, it's sort of like, here's an idea, here's a lot of possibilities. Isn't that crazy? And then it ends.
Yep. It's really like, I feel like not that I did this or that this is a bad thing at all, but it's sort of I can imagine a world where somebody's reading this and is like, okay, when is the story going to start? And then it ends. And that's actually like, that's the big thing with critics is they're like, yeah, the ideas are interesting, but there's no, this is not a story. So framing it like a story, I mean, I don't care. I think they're, this is fantastic, but that is, I would not be surprised if I showed this to somebody and they were, bored or expecting it to be something different. If you're like, yeah, it's a speculative fiction short story, because it's more just a descriptor of a place,
and it's there's probably like more ideas to chew on than like a story, because like it is just like a series of ideas. Like if we're interested in this, there's also very valid criticism of this that would be like, I don't care, this is just like literary circle jerking sort of. But I think it asks lots of interesting questions about books and language and how humans create meaning in the world and everything.
And sometimes a circle jerk can be a great time. So
I know.
Fuck it.
Well, and also, I also think Borges doesn't get a lot of credit for being kind of funny. Because I think
he's super
all the
funny.
ideas get really taken really seriously, but it's very funny. He has this crazy idea, and then he finds like little jokes in it, basically, that just exist in world.
Yeah, there's one I don't. I think it might be this. They're just like snide. It'll be like this beautiful paragraph about this
like time,
world, and then
or
like
something.
a snide comment about some like dickhead who lives there for like no reason. It's like, what? Huh? It's super funny. It feels like, I don't know. It's almost like he realizes that it might be taken as too like literary,
too seriously.
And is like, no, this is for this is whatever. It's
for fun.
Fiction. It's fantasy. It literally, I mean, it really is.
And I think something would be lost if it wasn't like amusing in that way. Like, cause it really feels like he's playing with this idea. So we should get to this. The main idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's an infinite library, and so the specifics of this are important. This is not like in a world. This like the library is the world, and the people in it live in this library. And there's these infinite numbers of rooms. They're hexagonal rooms with bookshelves on each wall filled with books. And all these hexagons are sort of connected together by these little vestibules or whatever, and spiral staircases. So it's like a big
there's a bedroom and a
honeycomb
bathroom in every
libraries.
single one. There's a bedroom and a bathroom.
Yes, there's a bedroom and a bathroom for human
what does he say?
requirements or something.
The most insane way to say you have to go to the bathroom.
Because I think he realized, like, this doesn't make sense as a world. There's a bathroom.
Yeah, there's no...
They're not pissing. He doesn't want to talk about where all these people piss and shit. So he just said, like, there's also bathrooms. And that's the solid world building we expect from Borges. So yes, there's books is in every shelf. Up, down, all around. You can go up spiral staircases. It's like floor on floor on floor. It stretches to infinity, and the inhabitants of this world are people. And this story or a text is from someone in this world trying to like explain it and also take some meaning from it. Like what do all these books mean? The big discoveries are the part of the story like goes like, what do we know about where we live in like this library? And they're like, okay, it's infinite. All of the books in it are unique, which means every book is every possible permutation of the letters. It's basically like the clear influence is like if infinite amount of chimpanzees typed on an infinite amount of typewriters, eventually you would get Hamlet, just by pure chance. And this is like where all those books by those chimpanzees went.
Mm-hmm. And you might be thinking, who wrote them? That's not.
It just doesn't matter.
This
is the world. It exists.
It's it literally the book. The story begins as like the universe is this library.
Yes,
it's not like in a different place,
folks. The story's not very long. You should probably just read it and get it free online.
Yeah, you really should.
It's very short because it's basically a series of ideas. And if you have like a question about like, what about this? What about this? It's probably answered in the story, or it's not.
Yeah, if the question is not answered, this is sort of, I think, Borges's like thing. If the question in the story is not answered, you don't have to worry about it. Like, it's pretty. You can have questions about things in the story and what's happening, but if you're like, wait a minute, but he didn't. Like, I don't recall in this story that he explains how the people eat. It's like,
no,
right? Because who cares? You're like, that's nothing. We have way bigger fish to fry. The universe is a library. Like, who cares about the food?
There's also some funny stuff like that where it's like not brought up, where the phrase like "it was announced," like that, like this was true about the world. Or, like, where did they announce this? How did everyone find this out?
It's very funny.
Oh yeah, here is this. So they talked about what they know. It's like, okay, the library is infinite. Each book consists of whatever combination of like the 25 letters of the alphabet, like periods and commas and stuff, like different symbols. And it's every book is every permutation of those possible things. And so someone was like, oh, and then someone realized, it was like, they were like 500 years ago, a reader in this columns three down and 4 across, discovered that no two books are identical. Which meant that this library contains every book. So it can't be infinite, but also they've never found an end. Like, it's so massive that it might as well be infinite.
Which is sort of like, you can think of that like like our world is also infinite in maybe the same way, and that there's no ending. It just like, you could like wrap around and go like an inch to the right and do it again, and technically it's like different. There's no like edge of the world.
Or saying something about like how humans interact with this idea of infinity, which is, I think, sort of what the book is about. Like, the library is analogous to our world because like we live theoretically in
we live
an
somewhere.
infinite world. We live somewhere that is also infinite, and it's like our inability to wrap our brains around that, because like technically there is a limited number of like ways atoms can be arranged.
Right. Yeah.
Technically, the universe has an edge because it started, but like our teeny little brain, like it's so big for our teeny little brains, it might as well be infinite.
It's like he says, I might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but there's a part in the book where like there's these, I think they're literally called, the Inquisitors are like the police. There's I don't remember who, but there's like this group of people that go out and they try to search for the book about them. And the narrator is like, it exists, but like the possible permutations of you finding this are literally like 0. You're never going to find it. And it drives everybody to suicide. You'll come across like broken railings or like like 2 guys like beating the shit out of each other, just because they're all trying to search for some sort of meaning. And meaning is not really what life's all about. Do you get it? It's about reading the books.
And I don't think we don't have to talk about this in order, because it makes absolutely 0 sense to talk about like things in the order it happens, because nothing happens. It's just like, what if there's an infinite library?
Technically, we could end the episode right now if we're just talking about this story.
We said, what if there's an infinite library? The end.
Yeah.
But like what you were saying, like I think the description of the Inquisitors is super funny, because he describes these different group of people and their like quest for knowledge and like finding meaning in like this library and in this world, and like the Inquisitors who are like looking for this specific book. It just like eventually they're just like lazy. They just like come into a hexagon, and like one of them, they start like, they're like talking, they're complaining about how many staircases they walked on. They take a book off the shelf, flip through it, and like
they're like, fuck it. Well, it's not. It's not here.
Whatever. It's not here, and they move on to the next one.
Well, he also talks about there's like this group of people destroying books.
Oh yeah.
There's people like, oh my god, that's so fucked up. But the narrator is like, is it really? Because there's that many books where like just one letter in one spot could be different. I think it's like, there can never be that exact book, but there's an infinite number of imperfect facsimiles of that book, so it really doesn't matter. And so it's like very funny.
I like how
it's
he
like a
phrases
hopeless
it, where like
quest.
The narrator was like, many tears have been shed over the actions of this group and putting a stop to them, because they would just like go into these like hexagons, just throwing books down. Well, each hexagon has like a central air vent basically, and it's like infinite, because it goes up and down infinitely. So this group of like radical people will like go into a hexagon and start chucking books into like the infinite vent and they'd be lost for forever. But like the author says, like, people have like shed too many tears about this because, every book they destroy, there's probably like a close enough version of it that we can make sense of. And like they talk about finding like little bits of language where like it's like someone once found a book that is just all HCV in a row, all from beginning to end. And then there was speculation that like, every book is interpretable in some way because of some language that maybe hasn't been invented or discovered yet. But then the author's like, but a book that's just HCV all the way through, that there's no way that means anything in any language.
Yeah, because every book has been written. Everything is okay. I was maybe saving this to the end. Danilo, are you aware that this actually exists on the internet?
Oh, really? No, I don't.
Yes, there's a web. It's libraryofbabel.info, and
I had no idea.
You can browse, you can search, or you can do random, and it is the Library of Babel. It even has like the prescript quote, "By this art you may contemplate the variations of the 23 letters," and it technically is every work. People have found full books on here.
Really?
But some of them are like in languages that don't exist yet, or like dead languages. It's really fun to search. It might be hard, like, to totally wrap your head around, but if you just go to this website and you press random, you can start to get it. Like, this book is called Esmov, and it's just nothing. It's just nonsense, but it might not be nonsense. It could be in a language that doesn't exist. Yeah, it's super, super cool.
Well, and we're going to get to the implications of, like, the internet and, like, AI and stuff. I think that is a very interesting reading of this book. But we'll talk about more what's in the story. A big thing that the inhabitants of this library strive for is, like, justification. Like, they're somehow trying to, like, justify their own existence and the meaning of their own existence by, like, finding some book that explains something. But then the author points out that, like, whatever book they find that is, like, the meaning of everything, there's also another book that, like, is the direct opposite, and then another that's like a commentary on the false meaning, and then a commentary on the false meaning.
It's like the worst, most frustrating philosophy 101 class of all time. Just everybody playing devil's advocate all the fucking time. And it literally, in the text of the novel, drives people to suicide and war. And there's like the human, I think at one point towards the end, the narrator says this race of people who live here is almost extinct because we just keep killing each other. Which, was also in real life is happening right now.
Well, and the author, two interesting things. I think towards the end, the author's like, I'm writing this down, but like, what does it mean for us to write anything when we live in a world where everything has already been written? Like what I'm writing now also exists in a more perfect form somewhere else than the library. There's also another interesting idea where he's like, you'd think that a lot of these books are like quote unquote nonsense, right? But he says like they're like there's so much randomness that there's a possibility of interpreting everything in some way. Like there's you can take a random book off the shelf and then there's another book somewhere that explains why that book is meaningful. Or he's like, we came across a book called Combed Thunder, and like that doesn't mean anything. Or Combed Thunder or The Plaster Cramp. And he talks about how like you could interpret that in any way, and that doesn't make it nonsense because like you're a person interpreting it, and it could be interpreted in a certain way. So it's
like,
sort of
even that is accounted for. Like all of the things that you can interpret differently, like the version of like the Bible you read and take away a completely like that exists. Like you take away a different message. You think like the version of the Bible where Jesus is the villain is real.
Or Jesus is a vampire.
Or Jesus is a vampire. Or Jesus is a werewolf. They all exist. They all exist. It's so cool sometimes. Like, this is, I have read this story before.
Yeah, I have as well.
Sometimes I think about it, and you can really read this and just be like, okay. Sure. Yeah, that would be crazy, man. But it's, like, I think it's really compelling that it's nice to know that if a world like this did exist, where all of the knowledge in the world was offered to you, not just the world, the universe was offered to you at any given point, things would still be shitty, just in a different way.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the takeaways, at least for me, from the story, is like it's not about the library. It's about like how humans as creatures would interact with this thing, like trying to find meaning, trying to find a way to justify their own existence, like not being able to wrap their head around what truth is, what it means to what it means to create something in a world where everything's already created. There's like a religion comes about from this guy called the Bookman. So they like believe like he's the Messiah who at some point in history had glanced at the one book that explains everything, and they like worship him and try to find him because he's like some enlightened being who has seen this thing and maybe didn't know what it was. But so much of like this is predicated on like the hope of possibility. In what is objectively a world of total chaos.
Yeah, it's like the craziest
which is very interesting,
world ever.
Which is like our world, right?
Yeah. It's a fun. It's fun to like, even if you found the Bookman, I think this is in the story, but even if you found the Bookman, he couldn't articulate to you what he learned, and he probably put the book back and is just like walking around. Also, like, he's probably not real. Like,
yeah. Well, it also doesn't like the library also doesn't like mean anything. Like the fact that you could like you could find one meaning that like exists.
Like, who cares? It's nothing. It's just the world you live in.
At the end of the story, the guy is like, our civilization is sort of like falling to shit. Suicides have increased, and the way people commit suicide is they just like throw themselves off this vent, and they just fall forever until they die and decompose.
They're decomposing in the air. It's like a really haunting. I think the author's like, I think I'm gonna do that. Just throw myself over the fucking edge, and I'll decompose way before I hit whatever mysterious bottom of this.
The author is also like, the youth of today just take out random books that like worship them and kiss the ground kiss their pages, even though they can't read a single word of it. Yep. Which like, so young kids don't read anymore.
I know.
But also, if they read, they drive themselves crazy. So I don't know. Maybe the kids are right.
Maybe Borges is saying you should be just on your phone. You should be on Twitter, and you shouldn't be reading his short story.
Don't learn to read.
It's sort of insane that this is the internet.
Right, I know.
This exists. I don't mean like the website. I mean literally like you can
anything exists,
and it is basically destroying the world. Like it actually is. The fact that you can have access to everything. Yeah. The only difference is like people are not adding books in the same way that people are like adding things to the internet and changing culture constantly, but they kind of are, because the Library of Babel would account for that, and like all of those books would still be in there regardless. And so he's imagining a world of like interconnectivity of thought that was like heretofore unknown, and now, even like not even 60 years after the story was originally published, it exists in almost the exact form. We just access it differently.
Yeah, and it has the same like effect. Like it's like he took this idea of like, what if we had access to like infinite information and like copies of copies and copies, and like what sort of existential effect that would have. And like we're sort of seeing it play out, which is crazy that like he thought of this idea. It's not that he like predicted the internet, but
no.
Like what it does psychologically to be like, the questions I've had of like, what's the point of being creative or like doing something creative when some better version of it probably exists out there somewhere on the internet, which is like, it might not like objectively, but like the internet is so
it does like it's sitting on somebody's like notes document somewhere. Like it does exist. There's so many people in the world. The same thing even happens.
So many people in the world who have access to the same thing.
everything that has ever been thought of has already been thought of, even like creatively and personally, whether or not it is widely available on some sort of internet or Library of Babel-esque situation. The same thing like occurs when you walk through a bookstore and you're just like, what? Like, why the fuck would I ever try to write anything? Like, look at this. There's so much shit in here that people are gonna like look at instead over the thing I write. It like reading this as a treatise on creativity, where instead of Borges writing a story, he writes a meta-textual narrative about the fact that it is impossible to be creative anymore, is something that is really compelling and insane for, I mean, it was published in 1941. I don't know when he put pen to paper for the first time. And also, it's just like 5 pages in one of his many critically acclaimed short story collections. It's crazy. Crazy.
Sometimes what I like to do is I like go, if I'm bored, I'll like go to Netflix or whatever and just pick a random movie I've never heard of and just like go right in the middle of it and see what's happening. And it's like, and it's sort of that same experience. I'm like, there's like this whole other thing I'm unaware of. There's a whole other world happening inside this thing that I would never have looked at or never seen and have no frame of reference for.
The similar thing is like when you are, I've had this a few times, like I'll read, I'll be in like a Barnes and Noble or whatever, or like my local bookstore, and I'll like find something that seems to be part of a larger series, like some sci-fi novel that I've never heard of, that I'm sure nobody has ever heard of, and you like read a couple pages and you're like, oh, this is interesting, I wonder what people have to say, and you find like ancient forums from like 2005 of like people arguing ad nauseum about like plot minutia, and it's just insane that it
that
really
existed this whole time.
Yeah,
like
you were just unaware.
Yeah,
it really makes you feel. How I feel about it is that it makes me feel very small in a way that I really like. Where it's like, oh, the things I do and the things I affect really only affect the people directly around me. Like I am not going to be the reason that the world is destroyed. It is the collective action of a bunch of people like me influencing each other that the world might be destroyed, but not me personally. You can't pin that on me. Just like you can't pin the acts of everybody in the library on the people who worship the bookman, somebody who doesn't actually exist. Or maybe he does, but it doesn't matter.
Or it's the same thing, like, you know, with like global warming. Like we'll destroy ourselves, but the world will be fine. Like, you know, there have been mass extinction events before. The library will continue. Yeah,
we'd rather... I think this is even brought up, I could be wrong, but the idea of this is brought up in the story, but I'm going to talk about it in the real world sense. We'd rather kill each other and explode each other than team up to fix like the natural disasters affecting humanity. They'd rather, in the library, they'd rather kill each other and wage war than unite and try to figure this thing out together. When really, at the end of the day, in the Library of Babel, there's nothing to figure out. In our world, we could actually figure out. We know how to stop something like global warming. It's just we can't. We can't get over ourselves in the pursuit of like knowledge. You mentioned this earlier, like generative AI is like a fucking forest burns down every time you like ask ChatGPT to generate like a bullshit tweet. And it's like the same. It's the same thing. We'd rather attribute resources to that than that which is nothing than contribute it towards a goal that could actually further humanity. I'd much rather have it be like this, where instead of AI generating bullshit every single time you put a prompt into AI, it generated like, yeah, it's a book, but it's, you know, in a language that doesn't exist and is the punctuation is all fucked up. It is fun to just poke around the website and hope you find something, even though you never will. Like, the chances of you finding anything that makes sense are...
That's so crazy. I had no idea that this is a website. That's awesome. Well, I was also thinking, like, as you were saying, like, in the library, like, it's sort of like the human response when faced with our own insignificance.
Yeah.
There's the urge to, like, do something about it, whether it's, you know, write something that doesn't matter, or like commit acts of violence towards like these books or other people, which, like, you know, in the grand scheme of the universe don't matter, but they matter to like the other people, like human society. It's this reaction against the unfathomableness of the world.
Yeah.
That is the issue, like wanting to do something about that or not being able to accept it in the right way, or
and who's gonna hear that? It's like shouting into space. Like I was in a local bookstore. It was National Independent Bookstore yesterday from when we're recording this, everybody. I hope you were at your local bookstore. And I found like somebody was just in there and tucked in their like anarcho-capitalist manifesto. And it's like, first of all, you know, I can't buy this here. You didn't put the fucking barcode on the goddamn book. It's also they'd be like, this is like yours. You probably brought this in here. Just take it. But it's like the fact that exists is good in the sense that it contributes. If it was cataloged in something like the Library of Babel, somebody might stumble upon it and might learn something. But does that affect me and the other shoppers in this store? Probably not. It just adds to the humanity's oeuvre, you know? Mm-hmm. It's good that it exists, but does its existence actually influence anything? I'm not sure, because I did not buy it or take it. So
again, the library is like our world, like in an infinite world where every opinion has a counter opinion, especially with the internet. Like there's,
oh my god, you go on Twitter, you press a tweet, the first response is some insane maniac's counter opinion. Every single.
I want Borges to write a short story about like the recursive infinite nature of community notes on X.
Oh my god, I know. Like, and all that shit, it would be in the library anyway. Like, everybody has a thought about everything.
And it's all in there. It's just like this. I hope we're making sense in any way. I know. It probably sounds a lot like we just took like a big hit and we're like, whoa, dude, we're like infinity, man. Which is sort of what this story is.
It's what it makes you feel like, though. Yeah, I think that's a totally fair reaction to something like this.
I think the most fascinating part of it is like the human experience, like with infinity, especially in regards to information, like pre-internet. Because I was having a similar experience. I was watching a video, just like a science video about like galaxies and how stars are formed and the Big Bang, and like it's like I like have no word, like my brain can't even like in this little patch, like every galaxy has 30 billion stars and this is a cluster of like 20 galaxies, and I'm like, whoa, my god. And they're just like, I'm like, my brain can't even begin to fathom that. And like, no surprise, people like humans like create religions and have conflict over all these things, because so much of I guess it's my opinion that so much of like human struggle and strife centers around like trying to find meaning in this life we have, and like the infinity of death and all that stuff. And so everything sort of comes from that.
Yeah. It's impossible to describe wrapping your head around something that is designed. We are not designed to understand. The human mind is not designed to understand infinity or the complexities of the galaxy. Just like the people in the library aren't designed to understand the library, and therefore spend their whole lives trying to find the book that will help explain to them what the library is, but they're never going to find it. So maybe what you really should just be doing is like spending time with your family.
It's like asking ChatGPT a question about anything. You're like, is it wrong? Is it in Spanish? Like, it's not right. It's like, it's just words.
Because it's just stealing other people's shit and like displaying it to you in a fucked up way.
And like, even if it had the answer, like you wouldn't know it was the answer. Like same with this library. Like if the bookman came across this mythical answer, like there's no way to differentiate it from a fake answer, because like by what measure are you measuring like that it's right or not? You know, like
right.
It's crazy.
You just stumbled upon one opinion or permutation of a possible solution to this problem, and maybe the book right next to it is like, actually that's all wrong, and here's all the evidence why that's wrong. And then another book is like, oh, here's why that's wrong.
And I think part of I was gonna ask a question about like what you think the significance of the title is, because obviously it's it's a reference to the Tower of Babel, where they build the tower and God is like, you can't talk anymore, and that's how we have French now apparently.
Yeah. He touches on it right away too about he draws the comparison about the language being so different. Like there's languages that like
don't exist yet,
don't exist like 2 floors up. Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's already a dialect. Like you go up and like we can't understand each other. I also think something that struck me is like the access to so much potential information fragments the view, like your views of reality so much, like different people's views of reality so much, because like we're finite beings with only an ability to like comprehend a finite amount of things. And so our realities get fragmented to the point that we can't communicate with each other. Like I think it's less about language and more about like I said, like humans' reaction to infinity or interaction with infinity. And I think we're like with the internet, we're seeing that play out. Like there's very little sense of like main culture anymore, because everyone's in their own little reality and bubble. And like if everything exists, you can find your own little perfect thing. And like there is something good about that, but there's also something incredibly terrifying about that.
Yeah, because the fact that things like Discord has ruined the online forum, because instead of it being like a public forum, it's like a private server you have to get a link to. And there's lost texts. There are so many. Can you imagine the kind of shit that is out there on fucking private Discord servers, both like malicious? There could be dudes fucking, doing the most degenerate shit in one, and then in the other one they're writing...
There's another one where like if every human read it, the world would be solved,
Right. But we don't know that because it only exists for that group of people who are in that. And it's, it's as if sections of the Library of Babel in this were like guarded by men with machine guns, which is sort of, it's alluded to. There's roving gangs of brigands who like guard certain hexagons, which contain maybe a book that explains... Like what? It doesn't matter what it explains.
It's also so big that the chances of anyone finding anything is like
so low. It's zero.
Like
just poke around the website. Every fucking thing you click on is like just nonsense letters. Yeah.
I think that the fractalness of, or the fracturing of like meaning and culture in this is very interesting, because like I think in the 40s or whatever, there was more of an idea of like, like mass culture sort of existed, maybe in a less sense, because like the TV wasn't invented yet.
Yeah.
But like when you read the newspaper, at least in a city, like even if it wasn't correct, everyone sort of got the same information, and so like even if it's wrong, everyone sort of believed the same thing. But like if everyone believes different things, if there's as many beliefs as there are like people about things, like about reality, it like all starts falling apart.
And it's
crazy.
Yeah.
It's happening. Maybe it's always been happening. To a certain extent, it's always been happening, but it's just
sure.
It's so amplified and obvious with the internet and with AI. It's just fascinating. I think the last couple of years with AI and like Borges stories is like, oh my God, someone's getting their PhD on this shit. Like,
oh yeah,
for sure,
happening in real time. Well, I think I don't know how much more I have to say.
I'm gonna leaf through, see if there's any other funny details.
Like we said, you should definitely read it. It's fucking 5 pages long. It's really good.
It was talking like in the beginning. He's talking about like the religions and everything, and it says mystics claim that their ecstasies reveal to them a circular chamber containing an enormous circular book with a continuous spine that goes completely around the walls. But their testimony is suspect. Their words obscure. That cyclical book is God. There's also a footnote right at the end where Borges loves making up fake scholars, which I think is great. It lends like this guy in this year in this city said this, and that person doesn't exist. I'll read the whole footnote because I think it's very funny, because the story ends And then there's immediately a footnote, and it says, Leticia Alvarez de Toledo has observed that the vast library is pointless. Strictly speaking, all that is required is a single volume of the common size, printed in 9 or 10-point type, that would consist of an infinite number of infinitely thin pages. Parentheses, in the early 17th century, Calvieri stated that every solid body is a superposition of an infinite number of planes. Using that silken vademecum would not be easy. Each apparent page would open into other similar pages. The inconceivable middle page would have no back. So it's like, what? Oh my god.
Okay. Yeah, the story, I love that the story doesn't end. It's like, actually, here's this. Because it is literally the postscript, or the footnote for the last word of the story, so you have to read it.
And the author ends with like a little bit of hope, or like his own interpretation, where he's like, so my opinion is that the library is unlimited but periodic, which means like it is infinite, but like the books start repeating at some point, so that like the same books, you could travel for centuries and eventually the same books would start repeating themselves. And like that super pattern is like the pattern of the world. But that's also, purely speculation, because the author decided they need some order.
Yeah.
It is interesting, like the need for humans to like have some explanation for something in order to like have like peace with it or accept it or something.
Religion has been doing it for since the dawn of time. Because it's like, well, if there's no religion, I think I'm gonna fucking go crazy, which I get. Part of me gets.
Well, in an interesting way, science is. I mean, I'm not like anti-science or anything, but like science is another avenue to try to like explain these things. And it's interesting in the ways like science can help explain things, and then also the ways that like it still can't deal with like the meaning part of it. Like, because then you use science, and then you're like, we know what happened 2 trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, when all the different fundamental forces split off from each other. And you're like, what does that? Oh, huh?
Yeah.
I gotta go to work.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's that whole thing. It doesn't. Does any of that really matter or improve your life if you knew that? Because you still, and I don't mean this in like a good way to make you feel better, you still have like bills to pay.
Yeah, it's the Library of Babel. It's like the quality of information. Like a book of nonsense is as meaningful as a book of something that maybe explains everything, because the solution to like human life and meaning like can't be found in a book. Like no one can write it, or it hasn't been written, or
because it's just
like
their
in
experience,
in a linguistic thought.
Yeah, it's the life you live that gives it meaning, not what other people are saying. It can help inform your meaning, but I think if you read a book and you make that your whole life, you have missed maybe the point of what reading the book should have done.
I love, one of the things I love most about Borges, and I found like reading a bunch of these stories, is like the way he's so like anti-thing, like things can actually be explained with language in books, and using like books and words to explain that idea. Mm-hmm. So much like of the meta part of it is even more meta.
Yeah, what a fucking genius. He's a genius. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I think that's all I have.
I think that's the Library of Babel. That's all I have.
Library of Babel. Well, if you
if you want to babble about this book,
yeah, there you go. You could babble about it in a 5-star review that we will our review section is not a bunch of hexagons with a big hole in the middle, and we will read it, we promise.
It's a bunch of stars with a review at the bottom.
Yeah, so it's not the same at all. And you can send us an email at hardcoverhooligans@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media. We don't do anything on there. That is going to change. I do promise.
That's on Mac. Don't come to me talk about
it. No, it's on me. But you have the show, and I hope you like the show. I hope this discussion, like Danilo said, didn't sound like two guys who are stoned talking about a book. I do think you should definitely read it. If you read it, you'll come away. Yeah, you might get it, or you might come away with a totally different thought. And if you do, you should definitely leave it in a 5-star review down below.
Or you might come away with they should just stick to reading Lord of the Rings, And to that I
Yeah,
say, we've already done that, so we won't be doing
Yeah,
that.
we already did that. We're expanding our horizons. We're doing literature. We're the hardcover. We're the literature hooligans now.
Oh, I didn't say this before. Jorge Luis Borges became friends with a certain Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Do you know who that is?
I know of him. Yes.
AKA the Pope, who just died.
Yes.
So, Borges, friend of the Pope before he was the Pope, and now the Pope is dead. So, I don't know.
Pre-Pope.
Now J.D. Vance
Francis.
killed the Pope, so.
No, you're thinking, if you didn't know that, that Italian guy was not named Francis. He had an Italian name, and now...
he had an Italian name, and he was from Argentina.
Yes, and he had the most Italian name, Mario. The greatest Italian to ever live, saving Princess Peach, Brothers with Luigi, Mario. We know this.
We know Mario, yeah. And we also know that the Library of Babel has the best Mario Peach fan fiction that has ever existed.
Yeah, Mario wants to eat a piece of her cake? Okay, all right, I see. Yeah, it's funny, like, there's, like, strategy guides in there for video games that don't exist. It's awesome.
Yeah, there's a Hollow Knight speedrunning guide in there that if you follow it, it kills you right at the very end.
I always I'm glad I was super confused when you were saying Bargoli, is that right?
Bergoglio,
because I did know that, but constantly I mix up him and notorious sex pest chef Mario Batali. And I'm always, when you bring it up, I was like, yes, is this the chef or the Pope? I don't want to be wrong, because I can't be the chef, because whatever. Good times. Yeah, R.I.P. the Pope. If you miss the Pope, you should send us an email about it, and you should leave us a review. If you are at the conclave, you should let us know how that's going. If you're a dripped out cardinal in Rome, you should let us know how that's going. You should let us know who you're going to pick so we can report on it first. That would be awesome. We report on it.
We become a Catholic news. We're a Catholic news podcast now. We will be live streaming the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. You will hear it from us.
You'll
first
see. You'll know what color it is.
You'll see. We'll be like, it's still black smoke, black smoke, black smoke. Black... Oh
shit! And then the beat.
They got one.
Fuck! They got one. They caught one.
Yeah, that's what they all do in there. They have to catch the Pope.
They
like
catch a guy. They don't want to be. They don't want to be the Pope. It's like a curse, and then they put the funny little hat on him, and he becomes.
That's why they can't film it, because it's basically like a big game of tag. Whoever gets, my God. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Whoever they catch and tag is the Pope.
You learn so. Whoever they catch and tag is the Pope. You heard it here.
Yeah,
first.
Like a bird, like a wildlife. They tag. They catch.
They
them,
tag him, like put
wings.
it around his. Yeah, so you find him, and you're like, oh, this is a Pope. That's interesting.
This Pope is migrated from the South Indian Ocean.
Well, it must be summer. That's fun.
And folks, there's a book about that in the Library of Babel as well.
There is. Stay. You know what? Stay. Stay. I thought if I said, you know what, it would come to me, but maybe that's
stay infinite.
Wow. Stay infinite, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Stay poping.
Stay pooping.